Ukrainian folktales are more than just a genre of folklore. They are a profound cultural phenomenon that has undergone a long and complex journey of development. They have absorbed fragments of forgotten myths, the symbolism of rituals, echoes of historical events, and social changes. So what is this marvelous universe of Ukrainian fairy tales? We explore this in this episode. Hello, I'm Nick Lisitsky. This is The Magical World of Ukrainian Folklore, a popular science series for those who want to learn more about Ukrainian culture and identity. Let's start with some intriguing facts. Fact 1. The most famous folktales are also among the oldest. Researchers believe that popular tales like The Mitten or How the Rooster Went to the Sea for Water originated in archaic times when humanity was at a childlike stage of development, engaged in hunting and gathering. That's why these tales, which folklorists call cumulative, are so appealing to young children today. Fact 2. In Ukrainian folktales, everyone plays by the rules. Even villainous characters often display noble traits and a peculiar ethical code. For example, in the well-known tale of Koza-Dereza, the serpent first engages in dialogue, asking the hero whether he intends to fight or make peace. This is likely why, unlike many global traditions, Ukrainian tales rarely feature the trickster archetype, a character who defies societal rules. Fact 3. In later tales, the heroes of our magical stories typically triumph not through strength, but through wit. They don't always physically overpower their opponents, but thanks to their intelligence, optimism, and sincerity, they find ways to defeat their enemies. In our tales, good is sometimes even craftier than evil. After all, how else can you defeat a stronger opponent? Only through unconventional solutions and asymmetric actions. Fact 4. Women in Ukrainian fairy tales are true superheroines. They are intelligent, brave, and decisive. The image of a wise girl is typical in Ukrainian folklore as a whole, and this fairy tale motif has been preserved in tradition to this day. A girl or woman can be an advisor, a savior, or take control of the situation and defeat villains herself. Fact 5. There is an enormous number of variations of fairy tale plots, like myths and other folklore works. Ukrainian tales were not written down for a long time and were passed down orally. In every village, there was a grandmother or grandfather who knew the most tales and eagerly shared them with children, young men, and women at evening gatherings. While the plots of the tales often repeat, each storyteller added something unique, creating a new story. The oral storytelling tradition in Ukraine still exists. At the end of the episode, you'll hear the live voice of a storyteller recorded in Bukovina at the beginning of this century.
І ту козу мали хлопчика, і того хлопчика писали з козою.
Since our videos are popular science, in the theoretical section, we provide definitions of key concepts drawing from the Encyclopedia of Modern Ukraine. According to the encyclopedia, a fairy tale is a genre of folklore characterized by artistic fiction, fantastical content, entertainment, a dynamic plot, a distinctive composition, a polarized opposition of characters, spiritual qualities of the characters, and the triumph of good over evil. The term fairy tale first appears at the end of the 16th century in Lavrenti Zizani's grammar, where it is equated with terms like fable, parable, and fiction. Interestingly, the words fairy tale, Kazka, and fable, baika, were synonyms until the early 20th century, used depending on the region. In central Ukraine, Kazka was more common, while in western Ukraine, baika was preferred. Today, however, baika refers to a different genre, allegorical poetic works. From encyclopedic definitions and our own experiences, one might conclude that a fairy tale is simply a fictional story for children, created solely for entertainment. But that's not entirely true. As noted by the renowned Ukrainian folklorist Lydia Dunayevska, most researchers consider fairy tales to be fragments of myths. Fairy tales are also called a playful form of myth. Thus, certain beliefs and ritual actions, including initiation rites, were described and passed down through symbolic fairy tale plots, which served sacred functions and were an important part of a person's integration into society. Therefore, Ukrainian fairy tales are not just fictional adventure stories. They are the encoded memory of a people, a key to understanding ancient beliefs, traditions, values, and worldviews. Over the centuries, Ukrainian fairy tales have been preserved and passed down from generation to generation orally. One famous fairy tale plot was recorded as early as the times of Kievan Rus. The story of Koza-Dereza is mentioned in the primary chronicle, compiled in the 11th century. The systematic recording of Ukrainian folktales began only in the early 19th century. During the Romantic era, folklore collection became a passion across Europe, and Ukrainian intellectuals were actively involved in this process. Tales were collected, recorded, and retold by Ismail Sresnevsky, Yosip Bodyansky, Yevhen Hrebinka, Mykola Kostomarov, Mikhailo Maximovich, Pantelemon Ulish, Ivan Franko, and Lesia Ukrainka. The first comprehensive collection of Ukrainian fairy tale prose is considered to be Ivan Budchenko's two-volume work. Later, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, collections of tales were compiled by Ivan Manjura, Pavlo Chubinsky, Mikhailo Drahomanov, and Oskar Kolberg. In the 20th century, during Soviet times, Ukrainian magical fairy tales faced a period of neglect and oblivion. Communist ideologues disapproved of the mythological worldview of our people, so orders were given to suppress it. Only certain animal tales and more modern social domestic tales were permitted. Nevertheless, our fairy tales survived this ordeal. Since the early 1990s, numerous fairy tale collections, compiled by Lydia Dunayevska, have been published by the Veselka Publishing House. Folklore expeditions continue into the 21st century. One of the most recent works documenting tales told by living narrators from various regions of Ukraine is a monograph by Marina Demidjuk, published in 2021. What are Ukrainian folktales like? According to the classification proposed by Lydia Dunayevska, Ukrainian fairy tales are divided into three main groups: animal tales, magical fairy tales, social domestic tales, some of which are novelistic. Animal tales are the most archaic type, rooted in primitive beliefs, particularly totemism. In ancient times, certain animals, such as wolves and bears, were considered totemic beings, patrons of a clan or tribe. Stories about them held magical significance. Over time, this magic faded, and the tales became simple, bedtime stories, sometimes humorous, sometimes moralistic, but no longer as magical as they once were. One subtype of animal tales is the cumulative tale, built on repetition, accumulation, and rhythm. Examples include The Mitten, Kolobok, or How the Rooster Went to the Sea for Water. Researchers believe these are among the oldest tales. Magical fairy tales have mythological origins and are tied to beliefs in the supernatural. These are stories where the hero or heroine undergoes trials, receives help from magical creatures, objects, or natural forces, and triumphs over evil. Magical fairy tales most clearly reflect the typical hero's journey, a narrative structure that underpins modern Hollywood, and not only Hollywood blockbusters. The latest and, to some extent, most realistic type. In these tales, the main characters are ordinary people living everyday lives. These stories highlight social issues and human flaws, often with a humorous or satirical tone. This category also includes novelistic tales, which resemble literary novellas, built around a single vivid episode, an unexpected twist, or a comedic situation, leaning toward realistic storytelling. In our fairy tales, you'll encounter many different characters, but according to Lydia Dunayevska's classification, they fall into three categories: do-gooders, the downtrodden; evildoers, Do-gooders. These are the protagonists who save, liberate, and defeat evil. They're not always physically strong, but are always clever, kind, and have a good sense of humor. The most famous do-gooders include Koty-Goroshko, Kirilo Kuzhomyaka, Bogatirs, Cossacks, hired hands, and ordinary boys and girls. Do-gooders are the most numerous category of characters in Ukrainian fairy tales. The downtrodden. The second most numerous category. The downtrodden are characters for whom the hero, the do-gooder, performs feats. They embody suffering and the need for protection, often serving as indicators of the hero's true morality and valor. Examples include a girl promised to a serpent, a kidnapped sister, a poor orphan, a cursed princess, an enchanted snake prince, or a bird girl. Evildoers. Evildoers represent danger and obstacles. However, a unique feature of Ukrainian evildoers is that they adhere to clear moral rules and are rarely deceitful. They typically keep their word and honor agreements. The typical Ukrainian evildoer is the serpent, which over time transformed into the image of a tsar, king, or devil. Witches, stepmothers, landlords, or wealthy elder brothers also appear as evildoers, strong and proactive women, a distinctive feature of Ukrainian fairy tales. A key characteristic of Ukrainian fairy tales is what, in the language of modern European values, could be called gender balance. Do-gooders are not always men, and the downtrodden are not exclusively women. Our female fairy tale characters are strong-willed, proactive, and wise. They can save men, solve problems for them, and defeat evildoers on their own. Folk tales reflect not only ancient beliefs, but also historical, geographical, and social contexts. As we mentioned at the beginning, there is an enormous variety of fairy tale plot variations, as tales were told and recorded at different times and in different places. The same plot can feature different heroes, settings, or variations in events, depending on the region. This can be compared to modern filmmaking, where studios create remakes of successful films, presenting familiar stories in new settings with new actors. However, with fairy tales, each version is an original work, and it's impossible to pinpoint a single source. For example, in Zakarpattia tales, evildoers, like the serpent, are often located at the top of a mountain, while in central Ukraine, they are underground. In Carpathian tales, heroines are often beautiful, while in Slobozhanщина, they are hardworking. Tales also differ in vocabulary. A skilled linguist can determine a tale's origin based on its original text, and distinguish a tale from central Ukraine from one in Galicia or Zakarpattia. There are countless Ukrainian fairy tales, making it challenging to select a short list to introduce them to foreigners. However, we've compiled a ranking of tales, each unique and representative of our culture. Top 7 Ukrainian folk tales. Koza-Dereza. One of the most famous, widespread, and likely oldest Ukrainian tales, found across all regions with slight variations. A cute domestic animal is portrayed not as a victim, but as a cunning aggressor who takes over someone else's home and intimidates everyone around. However, every action has a counteraction, a tale symbolizing initiation, the transition from childhood to independence. It tells the story of a boy who falls into the clutches of a cunning serpent, but finds a way to outsmart her and escape. The tale has many regional variations. In the Carpathians, for example, he doesn't sail, but herds sheep in the mountains. The Poor Wolf, another plot popular across Ukraine. An example of an animal tale with a cumulative structure, typical of the oldest Ukrainian tales. A humorous story about a naive wolf who constantly gets things wrong. One of the most popular magical fairy tales among Ukrainians. Koty-Goroshko, a boy hero born from a pea, fights evil, saves the downtrodden, and forgives wrongdoers. The hero of this tale is the ideal archetype of a Ukrainian warrior, combining physical strength with high moral qualities. Oh, a magical fairy tale with a vivid episode of initiation and the hero's growth. A lazy young man of low social status who doesn't want to work becomes an apprentice to the wizard Och and gains extraordinary abilities, which he later uses to overcome trials and achieve success. The Old Man's and Old Woman's Daughter, an extremely popular tale across Ukraine,
Дідова і бабина дочка.
symbolizing the folk concept of justice. It tells the story of two girls, one hardworking, the other lazy. The plot carries a clear moral: kindness and diligence are rewarded, while laziness and bad character are punished. The Wise Girl. This tale showcases a unique feature of Ukrainian fairy tale tradition: the image of a strong female heroine without magical helpers. This plot is absent in Russian tales. It's a story about a girl who, through her intelligence and honesty, solves complex problems, defeats antagonists, and earns a worthy reward. Which tales do you think should be included in this ranking? Share in the comments. The first collections of Ukrainian fairy tales appeared in the mid-19th century, so reading them in their original language can be interesting but somewhat unusual. Later, in the 20th century, adapted and compiled collections based on earlier recordings emerged. Even in the 21st century, Ukrainian folklorists continue to record stories from living narrators. In this episode, we'll briefly mention only a few books. A detailed overview is available in a separate article on our website, linked in the video description. Folk, South Ukrainian Tales, Narodnia Yuzhno-Russkiya Сказки, a two-volume collection by Ivan Duchenko, considered the first printed collection of Ukrainian folk tales. Little Russian Folk Legends and Stories by Mikhailo Drahomanov. Galician Folk Tales and Galician Folk Novellas by Osip Rozdolsky. Tales of Pokutya by Oskar Kolberg. Zakarpattia Folk Tales by Volodymyr Natyuk. Tales and Stories from Podillia, recorded in the 1850s to 1860s, compiled by Nikola Levchenko. Tales of the Green Mountains, enchanted by fairy tales, and other Zakarpattia tale collections by Ivan Lintor. The goal of our project is not only to introduce you to the magical world of Ukrainian folklore, but also to the professionals who study it. In each episode, we highlight scholars who have advised us and whom you can involve in projects related to cultural diplomacy, the popularization of Ukrainian folklore heritage, or other initiatives requiring expert opinions from folklorists and ethnographers. In this episode, we introduce Olesia Namovska. Olesia Namovska is a doctor of philological sciences, a professor, and the head of the Department of Folklore Studies at Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev. Her research interests include folklore and mythology, the poetics of folklore genres, oral folk prose, and the ritual, mythological foundations of the formation and evolution of poetic thinking. Friends, did you enjoy this episode? What new things did you learn? Share in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video so more people can learn about it. Let's promote the magical world of Ukrainian folklore together.
Мали козу, і ту козу мали хлопчика, і того хлопчика писали з козою. І той хлопчик пішов пасти козу, і так напас ту козу, що не знати що. І пригонить додому, той гід вийшов червоний щоботик на ворота і каже: ти їла козюню, ти пила козюню? Не їла дідуню і не пила дідуню. Бігла через лісочок, хотіла кленовий листочок, бігла через гребліку, хотіла води крапельку, і тим переділяла. А той гід недовго думає, тарах, ти вбив того хлопчика. От на другий день кого вже пішла ти з козою? Баба. Пішла баба знов. Напасла ту козу, не знати, як жене додому. Знов той дід вийшов червоний щоботик на ворота, сказав: ти їла козюню, ти пила козюню? Не їла дідуню, не пила дідуню, бігла через лісочок, хотіла кленовий листочок, бігла через гребельку, хотіла води крапочку. І тим переділяла. Баба, той дід вбив бабу. Ну що, на третій день вже нема кому, йде дід сам з козою. Іде з козою на пас, і так на пас, що не знати, що вже жене додому, прийшов наперед, бігом на ворота, ти їла кузіню, ти пила кузіню, не їла дідуню і не пила дідуню, бігла через лісточок, хватила кленовий листочок, бігла через гребельку, хватила води крапельку, і тим все переділила. А він недовго думає, бабах, ти вбив ту козу. Вбив ту козу, лупи, затупився ніж, пішов гострити той ніж. Доки ніж нагострив, так коза схватилася і втікла. І втікла і забігла в лисичину хатку, на липову лавку сіла й сидить. Та лисичка десь ходила в лісом, приходить додому. Що в моїй хаті на липовій лавці? А я Коza-Dereza, попів до Koza-Dereza, тупу ногами, заколю тебе рогами. А та лисичка ходить в плач, іде, біжить та плаче, здибає зайчика. Що ти, лисичко, плачеш? Як мені не плакати, як в моїй хаті на липовій лавці є щось лихе? Ой, ходім я вижену. Пішли. То в лисичині хаті на липовій лавці. А я Koza-Dereza, попів до Koza-Dereza, тупу ногами, заколю тебе рогами. А ти вони ходить, той зайчик. Ну, вже йдуть, здибають вовка. Чого ви плачете? Як нам не плакати, як в нашій хаті на липовій лавці є щось лихе? Ходім я вижену, прийшли, туп, вовка. І хто в лисичині хаті на липовій лавці? А я Koza-Dereza, попів до Koza-Dereza, тупу ногами, заколю тебе рогами. А вони ходять. Ну так вже плаче та лисичка, вже як вовк не вигнав, ну хто весь. Вже йдуть та плачуть, здибають їжачка. Що ви плачете? Як же нам не плакати, як же що в хаті на липовій лавці сидить лихе і хоче нас з'їсти? А він каже, то їжак, ходім я вижену. А вони кажуть, та там не такі ще були, та не вигнали. Йдуть вони вже, йде їжак. То в лисичині хаті на липовій лавці, а я Koza-Dereza, попів до Koza-Dereza, тупу ногами, заколю тебе рогами. А ні, це не їжак, це рак. А є рак, не бурак, як я щіпну буде знак. А та коза як схопиться, хода, утікла. Утікла, вони вийшли вже до хати, так вже каже, лисичка, будемо рак